9/11.
Right.
I mean, people were worried after 9/11 about the danger of follow-on attacks. We took extremely seriously our responsibility as national security officials to deal with the danger that there would be additional 9/11 type attacks against the United States. I mean, everybody anticipated. And I think if you had said to the average person, the average American on September 12th, 2001, what are the odds that 8 years from now, the United States will be able to look back and say that there have been no additional major terrorist attacks against the United States, I mean, I think people would have given you extremely long odds.
But he's using the word immediacy in connection with
but
Saddam.
But the point is, Saddam, as I said, was shooting at American forces every day. There were serious worries about what might happen, and Americans had been shocked by the vulnerability of our country. And we knew Saddam was the only head of government, I believe, in the world who praised the 9/11 attack. And there was a sense that if we sit around and wait, we could find ourselves in a situation where we would be fighting with Saddam. He might use his ties to various terrorist groups. He didn't have substantial ties to Al-Qaeda, but he did have substantial ties to various terrorist groups. And he might have developed them with Al-Qaeda or with other groups. I mean, we knew he had a history of working with terrorists, and he had given them safe haven, he had given them money, he had given them training. And so there was a serious basis for concern that he could use his contacts with terrorist groups to hurt us in a confrontation. And there was a danger that he might do so by providing them with WMD. And as you remember, the CIA said emphatically, and you quote Vice President Cheney, but Vice President Cheney didn't say anything different on that subject from what the CIA said. And for that matter, what President Clinton said and Vice President Gore said and all of the leading Democratic members of Congress during the Clinton years said.
Well, I mean,
and also your point about what the American people thought. I don't know exactly where you get your understanding of what the American people thought, but I mean, one indication of what the American people thought is what their representatives in Congress thought and said. And if you look at the resolution authorizing military action in Iraq, which was done in, I believe, October of 2002, you will see that the rationale for the war was very broad. It was not just the two things that you cited.
Okay.
And members of Congress are, in some ways, the best barometer. I mean, they have the strongest interest in reflecting the views of the American people, and they're a pretty good barometer of what the American people think. So I think that evidence outweighs, one's impressionistic notion of what the American people thought before the invasion. The fact is, there was substantial bipartisan support for the war effort.
Right.
Lots of Democrats supported the Republican administration, along with lots of Republicans, when the president sought congressional authorization for the use of force in Iraq.
Okay. I know it's definitely not easy. I mean, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback and go back and criticize. But moving on to the relationship between Iraq and Al-Qaeda. I mean, the administration made quotes, evidence from intelligence sources and statements by people now in custody reveal that Saddam Hussein aids protects terrorists, including members of Al-Qaeda. Cheney said, I think there's overwhelming evidence that there was a connection between Al-Qaeda and the Iraqi government.
Again, he's quoting George
Tenet.
Tenet.
Well, okay. I mean, George Tenet, I'm not suggesting that George Tenet was misleading the people when he claimed that Cheney's assertions went well beyond his agency's assertions. But I just wanted to ask you about the Office of Special Plans, which was the Pentagon unit that you ran, created by you and Paul Wolfowitz. I just wanted to operate. I know the group. I don't know if this is true. You can tell me if it's not. Was said to provide raw intelligence unvetted
That's
by
wrong.
the CIA. So operationally, what did this group do?
The Office of Special Plans, which is now called the Office of Northern Gulf Affairs, was simply one of the geographic offices within the policy organization. There was nothing unusual about it. What happened was, it's hard for a lot of people to believe, but in the summer of 2002, the total number of people in the policy organization that were working full-time on Iraq was 2 people. I don't know if you can imagine that.
Yeah.
And we went and got permission to hire something like 16 or 18 additional people to handle the enormous workload in the Pentagon Policy Organization regarding Iraq in the weeks running up to the president's speech. The first presidential speech on Iraq was at the UN in September of 2002. Right, so the government was working like crazy on Iraq issues. A lot of them were things that we were asked to support in the Pentagon. And as I said, we only had 2 people who were full-time on the subject. So we went and got permission to hire, as I said, another 16 or 18 people. I don't remember the exact number. And when that got done, the Near East and South Asia Affairs Office decided to set up divisions within the office. It didn't have them before. And the division for Northern Gulf Affairs was called the Office of Special Plans. And the reason it was given an obscure name like that, rather than the geographic description, was people at the White House were saying the president is about to give a speech at the UN focusing on Iraq. People are going to say he's already made the decision to go to war. He hasn't. And the White House said we don't want anybody suggesting through anything that they do that the president has already decided to go to war. So please be careful about that. The president wants to try to resolve this diplomatically. He's going to the UN. Don't undercut the president's message. And so the fear was that if we gave that office the name Office of Northern Gulf Affairs, people would say, aha, the Pentagon has just created a new Iraq office. So we gave it a nondescript name. Anyway, the conspiracy mongers have gone crazy with it ever since. I mean, it was obviously a disaster to give it that name.
Right.
But if you want to know what that office was, all that office was a geographic office within policy, just like the offices that we had that did Latin American affairs or European affairs or East Asian affairs. And it was not an intelligence office. It was a consumer of intelligence, not a producer of intelligence. There has been so much false stuff written about that I'm happy to have yet another occasion to refute.
In consuming intelligence, as you say, about that area of the world, did the OSP did you speak to defectors and members of the Iraqi National Congress as led by Ahmad Chalabi? That's just what I read. I mean, I'll give you the chance to refute
the U.S. government, all different parts of the U.S. government, were dealing with the various Iraqi opposition groups continually.
Right.
And so we worked with people from the Iraqi National Congress, from the Iraqi National Accord, from the PUK and the KDP, the 2 main Kurdish groups. We worked with people from the Constitutional Monarchy Party. The State Department, the CIA, White House staffers, Defense Department staffers dealt on a continual basis in meetings with all various groups. So, I mean, the argument that we worked with Chalabi has become part of the mythology that argued that our office was trying to anoint Chalabi as the leader of Iraq.
Right.
I addressed this at length in my book.
I actually read that.
And it's not